if you are trying to make decisions based on the data that you have and you have not been able to make the decision, you don't have enough data.
Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and again joined by a different co-host, Sue Cheema, who's our Chief Information Officer and our, as I like to call her, our Jedi Master, all things data-oriented, data solutions, CRM, data-driven decisions, which is what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yes, excited about it.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't follow me on Instagram, which you should, at franklarosa.elite, you'll know that I spent the weekend down in Miami racing with the Ferrari program. And so as I'm going through this program, there's a lot that comes out of that. But one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing down there is going through data, right? So we do 3, 4, 5, 6 laps around the track. We get out of the cars and we go right into it's called a telemetry room, right? And you basically look at data, how you drove. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is basically making decisions based on data, right? So data-driven decision-making, right? Because as we say, so film and data doesn't lie. When I used to coach football, I used to say to the kids and the parents, well, the film doesn't lie. You either made the block or you didn't make the block, right?
Right.
And what I learned as I'm learning with racing is how you think you're doing driving the car and racing and taking certain turns and accelerating and braking and all that stuff may not actually be what's actually happening. Right?
Yep.
And then when you go look at the data, you're like,
oh God.
Okay, that's why my lap was slower than I thought. I thought I was going much faster, and it turns out you have a slower lap. Right? And by working through and looking at the data, really granularly, like each turn, each going into a turn, coming out of a turn,
you're able to gauge it.
Yeah, you're able to gauge small, I'll call it micro moves,
right?
That add, fractions of seconds to your time. But without that data, you essentially go by your feel, or you go by what you think is really happening, right?
Right.
I think I'm braking the right way.
Right.
Right? But when you look at the data, I'm going, yeah, no, you're not braking the right way.
Your baseline is off, right? Whereby I think humans tend to have this bias towards, okay, I'm doing okay. This is going to work out in my favor. They tend to think that way. Whereas what data analytics really help you drive at is like, this is the real baseline that you have. And then you can say, these are the steps I can take to improve that baseline.
Right. And so it's interesting that you say it that way, because what we do in the Ferrari program is the baseline is the professional driver. So a pro goes out in the car and they do their laps.
Oh God.
Right? Yeah, right, I know. And so then you take your laps and your telemetry over their baseline lap.
Wow.
And then you can see where you're losing time and why you're losing the time, which is why, look, it's part of the reason why I love racing so much is because there's so much, there's so many analogies to business in terms of understanding the data that you have to make better decisions as business
100%.
owners. Because it's one thing to say, okay, so he's faster than me in this area, but you really don't know why. And so with the telemetry that we follow is you can see their acceleration points, their braking points, their steering.
Correct.
So you see all these different things that lean to you being, 0.3 of a second slower on that turn.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was my whole weekend, and so I wanted to do this podcast really about this because this is something that I think, again, I continue to talk to people about. Is most advisors don't understand what's really happening within their practice. They think that they do, right?
Yeah.
They have some idea or some concept of what they think's happening.
Yeah.
It's just like me in the car. I thought I was having really good laps, and
Yep. And then you're like, wait, what? This is my baseline compared to the professional.
What? How does my No, but it was almost like some of my lap times where I thought I was driving faster than I was in the morning.
Yeah.
I was actually driving slower.
That's crazy, right? Human biases.
I felt like I was driving faster,
right?
But I actually wasn't, because I was missing a lot of small things, right?
Yeah.
And so what this translates to what advisors are doing, I think a lot of times you think you're making decisions as an advisor based on the data or the knowledge that you have in your business, but it's really your biases on what's happening. And with what we try to do is get for practices and owners of companies to understand what's truly happening within their business.
Yeah.
And so you're going to really cover 3, maybe 4 key areas of decision making, right?
That's right.
So what are the 4 areas that you want to focus on today are which ones?
So I was thinking about business development. This is how you're generating leads. Client retention, how you're keeping the clients that you have after you get them as clients. Operational efficiency, which is going to help you get sticky with the clients that you have, and just overall benefits of having real-time accessible data that can help you drive the decisions.
Right. So before this, we were talking about on the business development side, and you were talking about sort of low-quality leads or lead scoring.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about that.
So I often see people say, I just want leads. I just want to generate leads. Whereby if you just switch that around a little bit and say, well, my baseline is, this is the kind of clients that have worked well with my firm and the services and the products that I'm providing. So it's RIA or, ultra wealthy or,
business owners, doctors, whatever.
Doctors, whatever that criteria is. If you define that criteria and target that specific audience, then the clients or the leads or the prospects that you get, you'll have a higher rate of closing those leads, because those are in the bucket that work well with the products and services you offer, and you reduce the time of closing.
So you need to know really not just the industry, the type of client, maybe how did you get them, what is their net worth,
correct,
what is their not family background, but are they tend to be married with children, or older, or retired business owners, or
life phases.
Life phases, exactly.
Yep. Are you closer to your first job? Are you a trust fund baby? Have you built a wealth through entrepreneurship? Are you a professional like a doctor, a lawyer? Like all those kind of cater or curate the advice that you may offer to your prospect.
So really, some of this is about forming or figuring out what the baseline actually is.
Correct.
So part of the exercise, I would think, is going to their existing clients.
100%.
And then
what works well.
Right. Like take your best clients and then break down who they are as clients.
Yep.
And then go to the next client, the next client, the next client.
Right.
And then figure out, okay, this is the score of these clients. So our clients with a score of 8 or more, whatever, or 80 or more.
Yes.
Right. Those are our best clients. So how do we then find more clients like that? How do we get our clients that are in the 50, 60 score up to an 80?
That's exactly right. And even with, to your point, cross-selling or upselling, like if you track the engagement with your marketing outreach through a lead scoring system, like you mentioned, then you're able to see their preferences and behaviors and even do the cross-sell. Okay, this person is engaging with, what's happening in the market today, or, investment properties in Florida.
Or banking or whatever, insurance.
Whatever that happens to be. And then you can say, okay, now I can curate my marketing outreach to this group of clients. This way, not generalize it to say, okay, tier 1, ultra wealthy, go even beyond and granular.
Yeah, it was funny you say that. When I was at Smith Barney years ago, we had a report which was called the Focus Report. And it was a piece of paper, but also you could access it on the computer.
Yeah.
Computer was better because there was data within this. I still have yet to see a report today that is as good as that was.
Yep.
Because not only did it give you data on your book of business, but if you went into the system and clicked a link, right, you can actually see those clients. And the one that always stuck out in my mind was the number of products within a household, product or service.
Yes.
So it was product or service So
Right.
it was one. It was like 3, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, like
Right.
4 or more products, right?
Right.
And for every product or service you added, so if a client went from a 1 product household to a 2 or 3 product household,
Right.
their assets almost tripled.
Wow.
And then when they went from 3 to 4, their assets tripled,
Wow.
or double or tripled. It was
Right.
a long time ago. It was there a long time ago, but. And so so I used to have my advisors. Maybe I was a little ahead of the curve, but I mean Smith Barney, they had the report, so I wasn't really ahead of the curve. But I just know how to use it because
Right.
I've always loved data. I've always loved
I
that
know
stuff
you
information.
have.
And so, because it gives you the real roadmap,
It
right?
does.
And
It
so I used to sit
absolutely
down with
does.
advisors and say, listen, you have like 47% of your clients
Mm-hmm.
are in 1 or 2 product households.
Yeah.
If you can just move 5% or 10% of those clients
Spot
to
on.
another,
Spot on.
whether it's a mortgage
Yep.
or it's an annuity or a financial planning product, like do a financial
Yes.
plan for them.
Right.
The likelihood that you're going to increase or double, because I think it was a minimum of a double.
Yeah.
Every new product, it was like a double, right?
Wow.
And so that was in a way was sort of lead scoring because they were telling you that a client with a 4 product
Yeah.
household on average had 3 times as much money as someone with 1. I mean, it's
One.
assets and revenue, right? The other one that you talked about was
Client retention?
Yeah, well, client retention, right? And I gave you the different spin on lead scoring, right?
Yes.
So you give me what you were talking about as it relates to a lead score or for
Like,
client
what are they
retention,
engaging in?
right?
Yeah.
Right. How does a client you're scoring the client based on their experience with you as a financial advisor.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So explain how you do that a little bit.
So if we are marketing, if we're sending outreach and a client is not clicking, not open, and all of a sudden there's something that catches their eye and they open it up and then they close it off. Second time they open it up and actually spend 3 minutes scrolling through, go through the link. You're like, okay, this person has shown 0 interest. Now they have opened it twice, have actually clicked through. We're going to give this lead or a prospect a 10 rating, right? This is the topic that they're interested in. Boom, there are the workflows. We need to market. There's some interest in this client or prospect that is intriguing them onto the subject, and that's your conversation topic.
Right, got it. And then the other thing that we can do
In reverse.
Well, we can get to that, but the other thing that we've done
Right.
in terms of lead scoring, or really client score, not really lead scoring, but client scoring, what do they call it, a lead score, right?
Yeah.
Is sending out questionnaires, and
Yes.
now maybe might be a good time to send out questionnaires right now. Maybe not. It depends on how your performance is with your portfolios, right? But sending out questionnaires to clients about their level of service, the level of experience with the advisor in their practice.
Yeah.
A series of questions, 6 or 7 questions.
The NPS score.
Right, an
Yes.
NPS score, so Net
Yep.
Promoter Score.
Yep.
And then you get your client's perspective, sort of their score on their experience with you,
Yeah.
which can help client retention, right?
100%.
And avoid attrition.
Yes.
So working, obviously we can help them with that, but figuring out a way, what are the right questions that you want to ask your clients about their experience with you and your team, right? Some of it may be around investment advice, but most times it doesn't need to be focused on investment advice because that's not really why clients end up leaving.
Yeah.
It's really about communication, their
Relational,
experience,
yes,
relational,
yeah.
right? Service, operational issues. Don't be afraid when you're doing a lead score, when you're doing Net Promoter Score survey. Ask tough questions, right? Ask questions about what's one thing that one area which your client feels you can improve your service level,
Yeah.
right?
And
Where I was going with this one was what would be very interesting, and probably now would be a great time to do it, is have your team do their own Net Promoter Score on your clients.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what is
Like an internal
Net Promoter
Right.
Score, right?
Yeah.
Where you obviously don't share it with them, but what is What is your experience and what is your support staff's experience with a given client?
Right.
Are they abrasive? Are they kind?
Yes.
Are they, they're not responsive with getting paperwork back to you when needed?
Yeah.
All of those things, because all those things create inefficiencies in your business. If you're waiting on paperwork to come back every time with the client, you got to chase them down. Well, that's more time you're spending with them than you could be spending with your great clients.
And that's actually proactive, because if you have that kind of data that your client is unresponsive and tends to take, 7 days to respond to an email, you start the process 7 to 10 days earlier than the due date, right? Because you're like, these bucket of clients tend to have a slow response rate. So I think anytime you create a process, having analytics surrounding it, it helps you create a process that's more optimal and curated to the behavior of the client or a prospect.
Right. So I think that's a really good point. It's knowing the data and then working and creating decision trees and workflows around that data.
Yeah.
So the third one we talked about, where you want to talk about, is really the operational efficiencies.
That's a good one.
Some of this is client related, like we're talking about, but you talk a little bit about where you see improvements there, mainly with the RAs that you've worked with.
So I think what's happened to most firms is when something is working, they tend to be like, all right, it's working. I'm not going to evaluate how much time it's taking my resources to complete this process. What are the bottlenecks? Is there room for improvement? They just kind of go through the day-to-day. Whereas if you just have a little bit, if you take the time to have a little bit baseline, I keep using this word baseline, of it's taking us 10 days to process, 30, 45 days to process an application. What are the bottlenecks? Let's identify those bottlenecks. How can we invest in resources, systems, processes to improve and eliminate or mitigate those bottlenecks, right? The first step is to identify what's holding us up. And I think that's where data could be vital.
Right. It is vital. Where I see advisors have a blind spot, I'm just thinking about conversations I've had this last week when I've talked to advisors about this stuff, right? And I think that as an advisor, you feel like if you're not a big practice, you don't need some of this data, which is completely the wrong attitude. The way you need to think about it is, imagine if your business was 10 times the size, right? What processes would you have to have in place to run the business effectively?
Scalability.
And 100%. Scalability, right?
Yeah.
And so even if you're not 10 times the size, you should be still building your business and your foundation today as if you were. Because all of the things that we're talking about all have one thing in common. And that is, you have to build the system first before you get the data.
1,000%.
Like, you just can't get the data.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have the mechanisms to collect the data.
Correct.
And then when you collect the data, then you can start to analyze the data.
Yep. Yeah.
We were I think I mentioned this on a previous podcast, maybe not, but I'm part of the Arte Syndicate group, which is an entrepreneur group, whatever, not talking about that today, but was out in St. Louis last year, and we got to meet with the number 3, he's not there anymore, he retired, but at one point he was the number 3 guy at Amazon.
Wow.
And he invented Amazon Prime. That was his baby, right? And so, of course, I ask a question because I'm paying a lot of money to go to those things, so I'm going to ask questions.
Right.
And so, of course, I asked a data question.
Of course.
Right? Because Amazon is really a data
data-driven. It's
right?
a data-driven company.
It's a data-driven company.
Yep.
He said that's all they talk about. They obsess about data. So I asked them this question, and I think I'm going to say this because it is relevant, because a lot of advisors they fear this.
Right.
And I said, at what point do you get paralysis by analysis, right? By collecting data. And his answer to me was, and I'll never forget it, he said, if you are trying to make decisions based on the data that you have and you have not been able to make the decision, you don't have enough data.
I agree 1,000%.
I was like,
wow.
I was like,
that's a good sum up.
Okay, that was pretty straightforward, right?
Yep.
And it made perfect sense,
right?
Because as we've been able to collect more data on our company on all sorts of things, right? what we started to find was it wasn't paralysis by analysis, because the deeper we got in the data,
you know the answers,
and the quicker we got to the
Yes.
answer.
Yep, 1,000%.
Right. So
Yep.
it was like, yeah, you're taking time to collect all the data.
Right.
But once you start having this data and you put these things on the board,
Right.
you're like, oh, yeah, that's
That's
not
how
a
it
good,
adds
yeah,
up.
That's not a good trend, or that's a good trend, or
Right.
like, well, we have a problem here, but look how we were in April or March of this year versus March of last year.
Right.
And boom, you can
Why?
identify
Yes.
the why
Right.
away.
Yes.
Versus like thinking about it and having a long conversation. Like, we go through our data on a weekly basis, and I don't know how many data points we have, but we have a lot of data points.
We
But
have a lot.
it really only takes us like 5 to 10 minutes tops to go through
Yeah.
our data,
Right.
just to see the overall direction of the business,
The firm, yeah.
right? And then if we want to dive deeper into a particular area, we can. But because we've now been collecting a lot of data for several years, right, we see all these trends now. And I think that's the biggest thing that advisors don't understand, is that you have to start doing this stuff now. Yeah. Like, you have to start collecting data today on your business. And I don't care if you think that you know how long it takes for you to open an account until it gets funded. Right?
Right.
You have a general idea. Well, generally it takes us, as soon as I hear generally, I'm like, nope.
I agree.
How many days?
Yes.
Not generally how many days.
What's the average?
Right.
Yep.
Right? I thought I was going super fast in the afternoon. Nope.
Yep.
I wasn't. I was going actually 2 seconds slower.
Right.
Right?
And you wouldn't have known that if
I wouldn't have
someone
known
wasn't
it
tracking it.
if I didn't see the data.
Yeah.
Because he was like, how'd you do? I'm like, I think I did awesome. He goes, yeah,
Right.
not so much. I was like, damn. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, you were 2 seconds slower.
Right.
Because I was actually trying too hard.
That's
Right?
another thing.
I was trying too hard.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't understanding where I had sort of blocks, right? And I think that's the
Bottlenecks.
problem. You bottlenecks,
Yes.
and as an advisor, you try too hard. You think that you're doing a good job servicing your clients, and you think that you're doing a good job until you get a net promoter score back from your clients, and not so much.
Right.
Right. You'd be a little bit shocked, or you might be surprised. Like, you might be higher than that.
Right.
But I think that, lead flow. You're talking about lead gen, right? A lot of our advisors are focused on lead gen, and they like, well, I have a newsletter. I send that newsletter out to
Who's opening it up?
13,000 people.
Right.
Okay. Well, you have like 0.5% of the people open it up
Yeah, no.
Right?
Why are they not opening it up?
because it sucks. That's
Right.
why. Right. But the point is, they think that they're doing something because they're doing something.
Right.
Right? But if you're sending out a newsletter to 13,000 people, and however long it takes you to send out that newsletter, and no one's opening it,
Yep.
it's a waste of time,
That's exactly it.
right?
That's exactly
But
it.
it's not just opening it, but where are they going? Are they then going to your website? So we send out videos,
Right.
right?
VSLs.
We send out VSLs that go out to clients. We track, one, are they opening it? And two,
track all data.
how long are they watching the video?
How-
And we've been able to adjust and modify some of our videos based on
The reaction and the behaviors beyond it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, they're only watching a certain amount of, like our first video was like
Reduce
14
it.
minutes long.
Yeah.
They're watching 4.5 minutes. So we went
Yep.
in and we adjusted, because the data doesn't lie.
It doesn't
Like,
lie.
okay, I can say what I want about the video being really good, and the end of the video is the best part. Well, okay,
Right.
they're not getting to the end of the video
Yep.
because they're
It's too long.
right. It's too long.
Yeah.
So we're able to go in, and this is, again, this is why firms have to have data. But the biggest hurdle here is starting.
I completely agree. I
Right.
think there's like fear, like, oh my God, how are we going to keep this data? How are we going to get this data? Is it going to be authentic all the time? And we at Elite can help create processes and systems and integration to not only have the single source of truth, but also give you a holistic analytical view on your clients and prospects to make them better and help you grow your business.
Yeah, look, understanding the product mix, understanding
Yep.
the blend of your clients, your top households,
Yes.
whether it's by revenue, whether it's by I mean, look, some of the firms that you work with, the custodians, they have some of this data.
Yes.
But what I haven't seen is quality dashboards, right? Or the data is in multiple different places.
Oh God.
Right.
Yes.
And having really good dashboards. So they all there's an old sales expression that's just like pie charts sell, right?
They do.
So for me, I like to see data. I like to see it in a spreadsheet format, but I also like to see stuff in like pie charts, either it's a bar graph or a pie chart, so I can just see trends sort of quickly.
Over time.
Right, over time.
Yeah.
We track our goals, our KPIs
Yes.
in pie chart format, so we can see, or really not really a pie chart,
It's
but
like a speedometer.
Speedometer, right?
Yeah.
So if our goal is X number of whatever the goal is,
Right.
whether it's dials, we can see just from a graphic how far are we away from achieving our
The
goal.
monthly goal or
the monthly goal, right?
annual goal.
But it
Yeah.
all starts with getting your system built the right way to take the data
Yes.
and then push it out to you. When I was with Alex Hermosi a few months ago, and he was going through some of the PE stuff and how to create how to get your company to have a higher valuation.
Right.
One of the critical components was the quality of your data, which we talked about on a previous podcast,
Yeah.
right? But one of the pieces within that is the data, like you might have the data in there, but if you have to go get it and put it together and all that other stuff.
Inefficient.
So what he calls it pulling it.
Yes.
It's inefficient.
Yeah.
It has a lower value versus having data that's pushed to you all the time or a refresh button and it just pushes to you.
And that's where integrations come in.
Right.
Right. We can really combine, like financial advisors tend to have, tech stack. What we could do is you don't have to look at multiple places to get one image of a single household.
Right.
We can combine it, bring it together into your CRM and say, okay, here is the entire thing related to this household. And now you can drive decisions and growth based on everything related to this client that you have.
Right. Or even accounts that aren't part of, because some of a lot of aggregation tools, right?
Wallet share as an example, right? If you have, X amount of dollars under management and they have, extended wealth somewhere else, like how are you tracking that?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Where are you tracking it?
And if you can set up your system so that you're giving advice and guidance to that client on, sort of holistically,
yes.
on all of their assets, not just what's what's under management, right?
Yes.
You have a greater chance of getting those assets to come over to you. So really having that stuff integrated, because I know that like Schwab, what we find is, I was talking to an RIA the other day, and they use Redtail, and they're at Schwab, right? And they don't have it integrated.
Oh,
right.
yes.
So they're basically logging in to Redtail, which is where they put all their client notes and everything like that.
Right.
And then, but all the client data, investment
is elsewhere.
is Schwab.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, well,
we can pull it in.
why isn't it integrated?
Yeah,
right?
we can pull it in.
And I'm not sure. I think Redtail can integrate. I don't.
Yes.
That's your world. But,
Yes, it can.
right.
Yeah.
Right. I actually bit my tongue a little bit when we were talking about automations and stuff like that and workflows, and he's like, "Yeah, we'll use Redtail." I'm like, "Oh,
right,
okay."
Yeah.
So I didn't want
Not gonna say anything.
I didn't want to say anything because he was so like happy with with Redtail, but I didn't want to like rain on his parade about like you can't really do workflows with Redtail.
It's limited. It's
but
very
like
limited.
I was like, "Oh, that's cute."
That's cute.
I was like, "That's cute."
You're trying.
You're trying. Right. You're trying. Right. That's sort of how I felt, right? I think the biggest thing, in my opinion, like the takeaway here, and I maybe this has been your experience because you've worked with a lot of RIAs in the past and helped them integrate their systems and all that other stuff.
Right.
is thinking as if, right? Meaning, if your company was 10 times the size,
correct,
what are the processes and workflows that you would envision having to have in order to run that company?
Well.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Or the other way I look at it, and I know I've talked about this in the past, but sometimes this is how I look at our company when I'm trying to make decisions on stuff. And that is, if I was a private equity firm or some other firm, whatever, it doesn't have to be private equity.
Yeah.
Private investor, and I bought my firm.
Right.
Right. what would the improvements be that I would want to see with my company, and what is the data that I would want to see before making the purchase.
Of course.
Right.
It's the attributes, right?
Right.
It's the attributes related to anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're a business owner out there, and even if you're not thinking about selling, those are the when I come across really successful people through the different businesses that I'm part of. One common theme is they always think about, if my business was 10 times the size, how would I have to run it, right? And that's then how they operate, right?
Yep.
Like, what does your system look like? What's your
Make
tech
your
stack?
future state your current state.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I call it future. Well, future-proof is a thing, but I call it like future-proofing. Like whenever I upgrade my computer, I tell Jim, our CTO, I'm like, I want you to future-proof it for me. Right? Like build it so that in the future I don't grow out of it. Like, right?
Yeah.
And that's what people should be doing with the company. And I just feel like too many advisors today, to your point earlier, think, well, it's working the way it is working today.
100%.
And so why should I change it?
Right. I don't want to touch it. It's working. It's getting me the results I want, but we can make it so much better and so much more efficient. I actually read a quote the other day that was by, HBR Analytics report, and they said firms used to grow using humans in the past, and that no longer is the case, or that is no longer necessary.
Oh,
and that's a
yikes.
testimony to technology, right? Because you could do so much more with so much less.
Right.
And that's more money in your pocket to invest back into your firm and into your clients.
Right. I mean, as a business owner, you should always be looking at ways to be more efficient.
Yes.
Whether it's using AI, but the technology that we have today is so good.
Yes.
But advisors, honestly, it's never changed. I mean, when I was a manager at Smith Barney years ago, we had really. I mean, even back then, I think Smith Barney was on the cutting edge of our industry, but advisors only used like maybe 10 or 20% of what was on their computer. There was so much more they could use.
Yep.
And I don't think it's changed.
Yeah.
I don't think it's changed.
And I think that's just where
It's our mission to get it to change.
Exactly. I was gonna say, I think it's just like some education is necessary in that realm. Like, I think they just don't know what they don't know. And that's where we come in, to Frank's point. Like, that's where we can come in. We have done this for a lot of RAs, for a lot of firms, and, can give you that value that you're looking for.
Yeah, look, not to toot our own horn, but, our business is a pretty good business. Yeah. Bigger than most of the firms that we talk to. And so we're just trying to take the lessons that we've learned here running this organization and bringing those to you and basically trying to give you a head start.
Yep.
Don't
make the mistakes.
Well, yeah, don't make the mistakes, or really learn the lessons sooner. Like
right.
What you've been able to do when you came and you started working with us has helped us instrumentally, right? And so I only imagine, I think I've said this to you, like, oh my God, if you had come 5 years earlier, how much further would we be with the data that we have today, right? If we were collecting this data, 5 years earlier than we were, not only growing the organization, but the money that we've saved in other areas where we didn't understand. It took us longer to get to it. Let's put it this way. It took us longer to get the decisions because we didn't have the actual data. We were going by feel. Right. Versus where we are today, where we know for sure whether something's working or not working, and we know to pivot much sooner, and that saves us. I mean, last year alone, it was, I mean, even in the last 12 months, let's just say, the stuff that we put in place today now, the year before would have saved us like $500,000 in costs.
Like, you can quantify that.
Oh yeah, like real money.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a lot.
And so for you all listening, sorry, I'm like having this engaged conversation with you because I'm so
We're passionate about
I'm
this
very
stuff.
passionate about this stuff, right? And look, if you're a business owner, you should be passionate about this stuff too. I don't have an accounting background. I'm not like a techie person, right? But as a business owner, you should want to run your business the best you possibly can, and you have to know what's working and not working.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And learn it. If you don't understand it, you need to learn it, or you hire someone.
Outsources, hire us.
Like Sue, like us, but you can't hire Sue because she works here. So, but you can hire her as an outsource.
Right.
But that's the whole point of a lot of these theories about who, not how, and outsourcing is as long as you understand that this topic is important.
Right.
Right. There's a solution to help you. You don't have to go out and build your own Salesforce stack and integration. There are people that can help you with that stuff. And then what you start to learn, which is what I learned, is it's like a learning curve. Once you start to see what you can do, right, you then start stacking
doing
more and more.
Yes.
Right.
That's a pattern. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Once you start, you're like, oh my God.
And you get sucked in.
Yes.
Right. It's and then you get hooked. You get hooked.
Yes.
When I was down, like just with racing, like I loved racing, and I didn't understand all of the theory about racing, and I still don't, whatever. But as soon as I started to understand how important data was to being really good, I was even more hooked.
You can augment that, right? You can almost say it works here. It actually works everywhere in life.
Everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Look, that's why, Tom Brady was talking about, right? Remember he was talking about when going into the Super Bowl?
Yes.
Like he spent the entire week before just going through data and going through video and going through just understanding every single thing about what he was doing.
Where, yep.
Right. And it slows your world down so that you can make better decisions, and that's what we're really trying to do, right? So in this world, that's really how do you generate more leads? How do you retain the clients that you have? How do you run efficiently, increase your revenue, lower your expenses, right? And some of it to some of those advisors and business owners that are looking for that, like what I call sort of life balance, the work-life balance. Creating automations and efficiencies actually is a way to do that. Yeah. It's a way to find work-life balance.
Yeah.
And your assistants and your support staff will appreciate it also because
systems never sleep.
Systems never sleep, and most of the stuff that you're inundating your assistants with stuff to do, and many of those things that can be automated and frees up some of their time, which you then can put back into wowing your clients, which then increases your client retention rate, which then gets you more referrals, and increases your growth rate, and it's a vicious.
It's cyclical,
right? Like you getting it? You getting it? You get it? That was from a movie. You get it? You get it? Anyway, I hope you're getting it. If you want to have a conversation with us about this, we'd be happy to do it. We love this stuff. We'll go down all sorts of rabbit holes with data. It is what it is. But anyway, you can. What's the best number for them to reach you at?
Email is sue@eliteconsultingpartners.com.
That's the best way. And you can email me at frank@eliteconsultingpartners.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. And you can also check me out on Instagram, which you should be checking me out on Instagram, which is franklarosa.elite. You see some great stuff on there, some good podcasts, some racing stuff, all sorts of things, some great content. And I love to see the data that we get on that. So, we track all that stuff too.
We
so
do.
People say, why do you
all
do
the impressions?
Why do you do all these videos of you in your car and you in your boxing gym, right?
Right.
Because the data shows that I get the most interaction and the most views when I post that kind of data. Without data, I wouldn't know that.
You wouldn't know. Yeah.
Right? So when I do those things in my car, my wife says, why are you posting another video in your car? Babe, because that's what the data shows I have to do.
Right.
Right?
You're doing it for the data.
Doing it for the data. So do it for the data. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.